Cost of living paradox. We talk a lot about cost of living nowadays, I think, especially on the internet in this last 5, 10 years. There's been quote unquote high inflation and a cost of living crisis. And this is objectively true. Like, costs have gone up, and it's bad for the consumer. And there's many factors behind it. The pandemic and COVID and lockdowns were a part of it. Money printing was a part of it. Other complex socioeconomic parts or other complex socioeconomic things are part of it. Tariffs are part of it. So there's a multitude of reasons for higher cost of living, and it's especially problematic not only when you have inflation, but when you don't have an inflation of salaries that accompanies the inflation of goods, right? So that is obviously a problem. But what I wanted to tell you is that objectively, it's better to live in a high cost living country or area compared to a low cost of living country or area. And I'll give you the most obvious examples there are. If you take just the most expensive countries in the world, they're going to be Singapore, they're going to be Switzerland, they're going to be Hong Kong, they're going to be Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they're going to be the US. And if you notice anything common amongst those countries is that A, they're really developed, B, their salaries are really high, C, their HCI is really high, D, everyone's trying to move there. All of them, even the US, even though people like to criticize the US a lot, have a really, really high immigration desirability index. That is, people who want to move somewhere mostly name those countries as countries that they would like to move to. And they have really high foreign-born populations. So Australia, for example, also pretty expensive. 30% of the people weren't even born in Australia. America, 15%. Canada, over 20%. New Zealand, nearly 30%. Switzerland, over 30%. So you see that in those countries, people want to move there, and it's pretty obvious that people move there despite the cost of living. So, like, people move there and they stay. People don't go to the U.S. and they're like, oh damn, the cost of living is too high, and they leave. Like, you don't see immigrants into the U.S. just leave the U.S. because of cost of living. And so, the framework I wanted to put here is that cost of living is a problem, but it's a relative problem, and it's kind of like immigration. Immigration is a problem, but it's a good problem. If you're from a country like Venezuela or like Brazil, Brazil is a good example because the population in Brazil right now, out of everyone who lives in Brazil, only 0.5% of the entire population was not born in Brazil. So Brazil 0.5%, Australia 30%, Brazil 0.5%, America 15%, and obviously, if you're Australian, if you're American, and you see some of the problems with immigration, you might be like, oh, Brazil's lucky. But no, actually, Brazil has a much worse problem than all those desirable countries because people are leaving. Mostly when people leave, they're around my age. They're in their 20s, in their 30s, in the peak of their economic lives, let's say. They have a whole life of production ahead. They've cost the country 20 years of education, living off their parents or welfare or the government or whatever. And as soon as they would start work, they just leave. Or as soon as they reach their peak productive potential, they leave. They go to the US or to Canada or to Europe or to whatever. And that might generate some problems in the countries that they go to, but it definitely generates much worse problems in the countries that they leave because now they don't have a productive population. And obviously, countries in Latin America, for example, that are known for emigration in the last 20, 30 years, they're gradually getting older. Not as old as Europe, but that's just because they're a little ahead in the curve. But eventually, Latin America will get old like Europe without having gotten rich like Europe. And so, going back to the main point, the misunderstanding that we have here with regards to immigration, with regards to cost of living, is that immigration is it's a problem of the good countries. It's like paying taxes. Like, let's say, oh, you come to me and you're like, damn, last year I paid $1 million in personal income tax. I'll be like, fuck, that sucks. But you're still in a better situation than I did because I barely paid any income tax because I barely make any money. Whereas you must have made like, what, $2 million, $3 million to actually pay $1 million in tax. So it's a good problem. And immigration, oh, damn, people want to move where I live. Well, that's a great problem because that means that where you live is good. It's better than most other countries. And in the same sense, cost of living kind of goes the same way. Because if you think about cost of living, let's say New York is a really expensive city, and let's say, I don't know, Rome, it's an expensive city, but it's not as expensive as New York. And for the sake of argument, let's say everything in Rome is half the price as everything in New York. But then also let's say that the salaries in Rome in average are half that of New York. So salaries are half, and cost of living is half. If you make a superficial analysis, you might say, well, if I earn double but I pay double for everything, then it doesn't make a difference. And you would be right if you could not physically live those cities ever. But the thing is, you can. And so what happens is, if you live in a high cost of living area, almost definitely in nearly every situation, salaries compensate for that. If you're in SF, if you're in New York, if you're in LA, if you're in Singapore, if you're in Zurich, if you're in Oslo, if you're in Copenhagen, you earn more, and then because you earn more, cost of living is higher because people are allowed to charge you more. They can charge you more, and they know you'll be willing to pay because you earn more than most other people in most other countries. And so, let's say the hypothetical scenario in Rome, you make X, and you pay for all your cost of living, and you save 10% of X. Therefore, in New York, if you live the same life, since the costs are double, but your salary is also double, you could also save 10% of your salary. So in New York, you're saving 10% of your salary. In Rome, you're saving 10% of your salary. But then here's the catch. In New York, 10% of your salary is in gross amounts double of what your 10% of your salary would be in Rome. You understand? Because your salary is double. So even though you're saving the same amount and it's proportionally the same, you're still saving double. And by the end of your life, you're going to have double saved than the guy in Rome. And then you could say, yeah, but then you're going to retire in New York. But that's the catch. You don't have to retire in New York. You could retire in Rome, and all of a sudden your purchasing power is going to be double than the person that just lived in Rome and is retiring in Rome as well. And if the other way around goes, if the person in Rome takes their retirement or their savings and goes to New York, then it's going to be worth half of what it would be worth in Rome, and they're going to be, well, half as wealthy as the person who just stuck to New York. Same goes for travel. So retirement is a bit far away, but let's say both the person from Rome and the person from New York, they both want to travel. And obviously the person in Rome, they're going to want to go to, I don't know, Thailand. And the person in New York, they're also going to want to go to Thailand. And guess what? The person from New York's budget is going to be double. But now they're going to be in the same place. So the cost of living in that place, or the cost of traveling in that place, is going to be the same. And so proportionally, it's going to be twice as expensive for the person in Rome as it is for the person in New York. Same thing happens with outside products. So, for example, obviously, we're supposing in this hypothetical scenario that everything in New York is equally expensive as to everything in Rome. Sorry, double expensive. But the thing is, you can import things. You can buy things from outside. And so what would obviously happen is if you're in an expensive city and you buy something from outside, your higher salary allows you to buy something that you're going to perceive as being cheaper. And if you're in the lower cost of living city, also a lower salary, that is not how it's going to work. And I think you kind of see my point. Even if everything is double, it's still worth to live in the higher cost of living city because you're going to be able to save more, you're going to be able to afford more travel, and you're going to probably be able to purchase more stuff from anywhere that's outside of that high cost of living hub, let's call it that, which is what Swiss people do, by the way. They literally go to the supermarket like outside Switzerland. And there's a reason why there's Italians, French, Austrians, Germans moving into Switzerland and not that many Swiss moving out. It's because it is worth it to live somewhere where the cost of living is higher, because almost in all cases, it's because salaries are disproportionately higher. And that's the second point. The second point is normally it's not the case that somewhere has double the cost of living and double the salary. What is normally the case is somewhere has double the cost of living and triple the salary. And if you go on Reddit, for example, right now, and you read people who moved from Europe to the U.S., that's what they're going to say. Most people who move from Europe to the U.S., they say, yeah, cost of living doubled, and I had to pay for my own healthcare, and now I'm going to have to pay for, I don't know, college, and I had to buy a car, and supermarket is more expensive, and overall, my whole cost of living is like double, but the salary is 4 times higher, or 5 times higher, or 3 times higher for that matter. So the point is, it is overall worth it to live in a high cost of living area. Obviously, your specific situation is going to be an exception. So, for example, in the U.S. specifically, if you're a doctor, normally you make more if you live in a low cost of living area. So that's like an even bigger arbitrage, and it would be definitely worth it for you to move out of New York or LA or I don't know, Seattle, and into I don't know, countryside Wisconsin or countryside Wyoming or whatever, or North Carolina or Tennessee, because those states pay more for doctors. So you're going to be moving to a lower cost of living area, and you're going to be making more money. Second example, if you're a tech bro and you live 100%, like you work 100% online, then obviously by definition you can get the good salary. You can have your cake and eat it too. Like you can have the good salary, and you can also live somewhere where the cost of living is relatively lower. So I understand that cost of living is a point of concern. I understand that it's a problem. I understand that overall, some cities, some places have become less livable, but it it's still not a good measure of where you want to live and where you don't want to live. This is Melbourne right now. I'm in Park. I've been living here for nearly 10 months now. And I'm going to tell you, Melbourne is probably the second most expensive city in Australia. Probably loses to Sydney. And definitely one of the most expensive cities in the world. And guess what? Melbourne is awesome. I love living here. And I work here and I can afford everything I want. I bought this camera. I bought this tripod that the camera's on. I bought these shoes. And I went traveling for a month. And I'm saving money to go to Asia. And now I'm even working part-time. I'm working like 25 to 30 hours a week, which isn't even full time, and I'm paying for everything. And it's not a glamorous living, but it's a living, you know? And if I went to Colombia, where cost of living is like a third of what cost of living in Melbourne is, I wouldn't be having all this. I wouldn't be having this nice of a life, you know? So understand that some problems are good. Some problems, you still want to solve them, but they're good problems to have. Everyone wants to move here. That's a good thing. That means that you're living somewhere that's good. Cost of living is high. That's good. That's a good thing. That means that everyone there somehow can afford things because their salary is actually worth things. One other consideration. Let's say you're going to hire a plumber, for example. So you're hiring a plumber and you're like, damn, I'm paying $500 for the service the plumber's like doing. And if I were in Brazil or if I were in, I don't know, Bolivia or if I were in Egypt, I'd be paying $20, and damn, that sucks because like you're paying $500 now, but you'd pay only $20 if you're in those countries. But the thing is, like, if you were the plumber, you'd rather that be paid $500 than $20, you know. And so the fact that the cost of living is higher is an indication that people can actually make a living. Because if you're paying a lot for someone to clean your house, if you're paying a lot for someone to do your plumbing or to for your electrician or if you're tipping a lot and like you have to tip or something like that, that means that all those individual people are making more money. You know, all the people around you are making more money, which is part of the reason why the cost of living is higher in the first place. And yeah, I'm gonna finish this video right here. But this is, in my opinion, the cost of living paradox. Let's call it the good problem paradox. And I'll see you guys around.